Hello, my name is Russell Michler. I'm a technology consultant in Vancouver, Washington, and today we're going to be talking about Google Drive, Team Drive for end users. Today's discussion is really just about how Team Drive works and how you might be able to use Team Drive inside of your organization in your daily work. You probably already know about Google Drive, right? I mean, I'm already assuming that you're probably familiar with G Suite and Google's product that allows you to be able to store files accessible through G Suite online. You're probably familiar that it has about 30 gigabytes of storage per user. That's how much you have in terms of both your email and your as well as your email as well as your files, and that you're able to access those files either through the web or through the mobile app, or you could be able to receive them through drive synchronization, bringing down data from the cloud and putting it onto your computer. And you're probably also familiar with Google Drive, that it's a secure place where data is encrypted, both at rest on Google servers as well as in transit. But there are a few things about Google Drive that really had some severe limitations when it came to operating inside of businesses. And primarily, there was a lot of peer to peer file sharing that went on that made it complicated to be able to access resources in a consistent way. And what I mean by that is that everybody was sharing information to each other in ways that was not consistent and that was difficult to be able to find things. And so that made it a challenge inside of an organization to be able to manage. Plus, it was difficult to be able to target or identify the specific areas you needed to back up or to be able to provide some redundancy to because of the information that was spread across so many different users. Furthermore, there was also a challenge inside of Google Drive that if you have files that were owned by a user and shared, and then if you deleted the user, those files then suddenly vanished, they disappeared, which was a severe problem if we wanted those files to be maintained over time. Um, also, there was a need to be able to have something like a centralized sharing point, something like a file server. But what if you exceeded over 30 gigabytes of storage, which is what's allocated to each user? That again creates kind of a problem. We need a centralized point to be able to share files, but we need it to exceed the 30 gigabyte limitation. And what if we wanted to be able to set varying levels of security over different files? We couldn't do that very well inside of Google Drive. And what if we didn't want to synchronize all that data underneath an individual user account down to the user's device, taking up all of their hard drive storage? And that's particularly complicated by the newer hard drives that are out, solid state drives that are relatively small but very fast. And yet we were downloading and trying to synchronize large volumes of data from the cloud onto that end user's device, and that would take up a lot of their storage, even crash their machine. And heaven help us if that laptop one day was stolen, because there's very little security wrapped around the information that's downloaded from the cloud and put onto that user's hard drive. Yikes. I mean, that was a big problem. So all of these factors made it very difficult for the enterprise, for companies to be able to use a Google Drive. And that's where we see the entrance of Team Drives. Team Drives is Google's answer to that problem. And what it is essentially a private file server for a G Suite domain that makes shares available to its end users through the cloud. You'll now see that Google Drive is in your that you'll now see that Team Drives is inside of your Google Drive. If you haven't noticed it already, you should be able to find it inside of the left-hand navigation menu that you see here. But if you don't see the Team Drives, don't sweat, because there's a way to be able to enable it. It could be that you're using G Suite basic licensing and Team Drives aren't available inside of that licensing model. So you may want to look at, talk to your administration about the possibility of upgrading your G Suite licensing if it's not available to you. But also, Team Drives may not have been implemented by the G Suite domain yet. So then you want to talk to your administrator about implementing Team Drives for their organization. The hyperlink inside of this presentation that you see here actually opens up another presentation I have for administrators for turning on G Suite Team Drives. So that may be of use to your organization. Team Drives gives organizations a centralized place to be able to store, manage, and backup files for an entire company. If I'm just to switch over to my own team drives, you'll see that I have my drive, which is content that is owned by me and seen by me and is relatively private to me, versus team drives, which is a public space. And you'll know that Google tries to differentiate a bit the way that these things look. You'll see that there is a icon that looks very different for each one of the folders. And you see that each folder or each share has members or people who have been assigned to them. So Google tries to differentiate that space a little bit so that visually you can see that you're going to a different space. And Team Drives is different from the My Drive location in some ways, but not different at all. And let me kind of explain what that means. Team drives aren't owned by users. They are administered by a G Suite administrator. So the administrator must set up the team drive and then assign membership to that drive, which means that we assign users to that drive who can be able to use it. You'll notice this is a little bit different than My Drive, where you can create your own folders and create your own files and set up your own permissions and sharing. Well, inside of team drives, there is a supervisor, if you will, and that supervisor sets up these different containers, and these different containers are then managed. And if you're interested, different people can manage those different containers or those different shares. And so you can have a team of G Suite administrators constantly making changes to shares on their own volition. Files that are stored in team drives aren't your files. In fact, they belong to the team drive itself. So when you move a file underneath a team drive, its permissions get stripped away, and then the ownership gets owned by the team drive. Furthermore, the team drive inherits the permissions that are set by the team drive administrator underneath that share. So if you had different sets of permissions on that file, when you move it underneath the team drive, it automatically inherits those rules or those permissions. So because of that, the team drives don't allow files to follow different rules. Inheritance is mandatory. So they inherit permissions from that upper level share and they can't deviate from it. So you cannot change the permissions on files and folders inside of a team drive as an end user. You are subject to whatever the settings are that are set up by the team drive administrator. So also, you will be also unlikely to share files to people outside of your company from within a team drive. That's because team drive is generally considered a private space and is not something that we share to the end users outside of our own company. Furthermore, you'll be unlikely to share content to members, unlikely to share content. I think I have that spoken wrong there. Unlikely to share content to those who are not members of a team drive, to those who are not members of a team drive. And that's generally because it wants you to be able to try. Oh, there we go. You will only be likely to share. There we go. To those who are members of a team drive. And again, the idea here is that it's trying to maintain the consistency of sharing. If the team drive administrator sets up a certain level of permissions on the team drive, they don't want those violated by having users grabbing content and sharing it to somebody else, or copying that information and making it available to another user inside of the company. You are only able to show or present information to people who already have access to it. And so that's why it's there. So like I was saying, Google tries to be able to give a different look and feel to team drives. And you can be able to see that in the upper level banner where it tries to be able to insert a graphic. And you can see that banner here. If you go into a share, it automatically then changes up at the top. And that change can be actually modified by the team drive administrator. They can set different images to become that banner. And the whole idea is to be able to give a different look and feel. It's like a different place that is trying to inform the end user that they're now in a space that is more of a public space. And meanwhile, that banner also changes into an icon that represents the theme for that team drive. And that theme is represented by the icons that you can see here when you go into the team drives itself. So when you add information to a team drive, some members of the team drive have been given editor access, which means that users have the ability to add and remove files underneath the team drive. Also, members can be given just read or comment access or no access at all. And this isn't different from the normal Google Drive. That's relatively consistent. So most of the time, members of a team drive will have editor access, which then allows them to be able to add and remove files on their team drive like you normally would underneath My Drive inside of Google Drive. That process works the same way as it does, and there's really no big difference there. But what is different is ownership. You no longer own the file, and that is now owned by the team drive and then managed by the team drive administrator. And as I was saying, that file inherits the rules that are set by the root level team drive. Now, this is kind of good in many ways. One is that it centralizes the file sharing. It allows the file sharing to remain consistent throughout the organization. If we were to delete a user that created content inside of a team drive, or they were to leave the company, that information still stays with the company and it doesn't get deleted. And it can be managed and backed up from that centralized location. So that's pretty cool. So are there any drawbacks to storing content in the team drive? And the answer is no, not really. It's just mindful that the content you put into a team drive is for a team to share. It's not really owned by a person, but it's collaborated upon by a work group. So does Team Drive work with Filestream? And the answer is absolutely it does. It works directly with Filestream, which is a product from Google that allows you to be able to see your Google Drive from your native file system, whether or not you have a Mac or you have a PC. It allows you to be able to navigate and open up files directly from the Google Drive using some tools on your device. And that same tool, Filestream, allows you to be able to see team drives, and you can integrate and work between the different drives on your own computer, just as if you were looking at another hard drive of your machine. And you don't have to necessarily use the web interface to be able to access team drives. But team drives does exist in the web interface, as you saw over here. Allows you to be able to navigate as if you were looking at it from a tree structure, but allows you to be able to drill down into it just like you would a normal file system. And you can be able to see files that have been placed into that area, and you can be able to work on them, even be able to create new content if you have editor permissions. So does Team Drive, though, work with Google Backup and Sync? And the answer is no. It's because Google Backup and Sync is Google's non-enterprise product. It's for end retail customers. It works to be able to back up information and store data that's on a PC or on a Mac onto the user's Google Drive so that you have a backup and recovery option. That's all it does. It's not meant to work with team drives. So team drives is not visible. It can't be seen inside of Google Backup and Sync. But that said, can you run both Backup and Sync and Filestream at the same time? Commercial G Suite customers can. So there are benefits to running both if that's ever of an interest, where you could be able to use Google Backup and Sync to be able to back up contents of a hard drive onto a location called computers, which you would see for me right here. My computers are using that product to be able to back up my two Macs, and I have content underneath these locations that is relative to the Macs, and it's being performed by Google Drive Backup and Sync. But I use Filestream on the Mac to be able to access my drive and my team drives. Both can be run concurrently. And does team drives work with Google Drive mobile app? They sure do. Once you open up your Google Drive application on your mobile device, you'll see that team drives has become a location. Now, I will say that before you go off and install Google Backup and Sync, you may want to talk to an administrator of your company about whether or not that's absolutely necessary. You may, in fact, be already backing things up using some other tools inside of your company that you're not aware of. And this is a relatively strong product, Google Backup and Sync, a relatively strong product for a situation where no other backup exists and that you want to just quickly provide a synchronization, a means of copying information out from your PC, out from your laptop, out onto Google Drive just for safekeeping. So in summary, what is Google Team Drives all about? Well, Google Team Drives are Google's answer to having a private file server in the clouds. It gives access to content using the web interface, the mobile app, or through the use of Google Drive Filestream that's located on the PC or the Mac. It allows team drives to be able to centralize file management, permissions, sharing, and backups. Team drives are administered by a G Suite administrator who must assign membership of team drives to individual users. Content that's added to a team drive changes ownership to the team drive itself underneath the Google Drive platform. Team drives are a great way to be able to share files with groups of users. And if you don't see team drives, ask your G Suite administrator for help. They might be able to walk through the process to get it implemented and to be able to allow you to use that tool over time. So thank you very much for your time. Again, my name is Russell Michler. I'm a technology consultant. I teach as well as I help small to mid-range businesses with these problems. If you have any and all questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thanks again.